could, I could see him across a ballroom at a signing, and if he came into my line of sight, he could be 40 yards away. Shorty! And with no pause and no hesitation, what is it, Fatso? Those were our pet names for each other.
Love it.
And it was immediate. It wasn't like usually when somebody screams at you, you look around and go, what did they say?
With that said, a lot of happy times. As I mentioned at the top of the show, there are also some news that has come across actually last week that a dear friend of yours over the years and someone that became a close friend of mine over the last year passed away. And guys, I have so many notes in front of me. Thank you, Andrew, on the career of Kevin Sullivan. And we can sit here and take time and talk about his career in Florida. We can talk about his time and career in Crockett as the games master when he first came over in the 87 and the varsity club and the group and he and Nancy and their relationship, even when he was in Florida as the Devil and everything that he did. And then you think about the Dungeon of Doom and his time as Booker and WCW. And there's so much about his career that we can go through the notes. But I think, Arn, what I want to do is, first of all, I want to have you share some just overall thoughts about Kevin and your time and maybe any kind of personal traveling stories, or maybe we'll start with how you first met, your first remembrance of meeting Kevin Sullivan. We'll start there. And as you're thinking about that, I want to open it up to the members and everybody watching that's viewing. We have quite a bit large audience. And for those that are watching on YouTube, you can send in chats. Don't forget the super chat. Obviously, I see Liam, you have a super chat. We're going to come to you here in a minute. But throw those questions in because this is your opportunity to talk to Arn and ask him his opinion and your thoughts on Kevin Sullivan. And then I'm also going to share about the over 30 episodes that I got to work with Kevin on Tuesday with the Taskmaster and what I got to learn about the man behind the scenes. So, Arn, let's start there. Let's talk about your first interaction. As we're calling this episode Remembering Shorty, and that was your affectionate name for Kevin. So just share some thoughts that you have.
Well, I could see him across a ballroom at a signing, and if he came into my line of sight, he could be 40 yards away. Shorty! And with no pause and no hesitation, what is it, Fatso? Those were our pet names for each other.
Love it.
And it was immediate. It wasn't like usually when somebody screams at you, you look around and go, what did they say? It was crystal clear. We've been friends since probably the first time we met. And I think it was when he was bouncing around and in the Georgia 80s. Days in the early 80s, yeah. I think we're on a show. Believe it or not, in Athens, Georgia, which was not a hotbed for wrestling like it is football, but they ran a show there, and we were leaving, going out to the car after the show was over, and he just introduced Nancy. It was my first meeting Nancy, and she was just Nancy then. She was not woman. So I met her as, I think they were just, I don't even know if they were married yet. Probably not. But nice lady. Kevin was really a nice guy, in just a locker room setting. We didn't talk about a whole lot of stuff, but I think even then he was talking about sports. And the guy, it was Forrest Gump of the sporting world, guys. If you don't believe it, ask him anything about anybody in any era. And if he didn't have the immediate answer, he would have circumstances surrounding it where he knew what you were talking about. Guy's brilliant.
He not only that, but the time just getting to talk to him, he was such a history buff. I used to always joke and say, Kevin, he would say, Paul, do you remember blah, blah, blah? And it would be a historical event. And I just really felt uneducated and dumb when I would have a conversation with Kevin. So I started using this hashtag educate us. And I would ask him a question, and he would, and his mind as a 73, 74-year-old man still remembered so much detail about history and geography and different questions. And I was just so fortunate to get to know that part of him, and sports. Don't get me wrong. He knew everything, a walking almanac, an encyclopedia for sports, but history, he loved history.
Yeah, don't feel bad. He made me feel stupid all the time too. And not just talking about wrestling, which we did talk about a lot, because I was wanting to learn, when I was a young guy in the business. Any veteran that would take the time to talk to me, I would, I always wanted to know the whys or the why nots, and that wasn't something that you talked about. Everybody didn't talk about that, but I always figured out pretty early, I know this guy does this thing after this happens, or this guy over here does something after that happens, but why is he doing it? What is the reason behind it? And he could tell you. If you ask him, he would tell you.
He had as we were talking before the show started about his start in the business. And if you do your research on Kevin, it says he had no formal training. His first match was in Montreal, and then he came down Florida. Then he would start working with the WWF in Florida. He was tag champs with Eddie Graham, and he had an influence
Mike
there.
Graham, right?
Mike Graham. And then you can tell I'm just freestyling here now, but then he went to the WWF. Then he was over in San Francisco, and a lot of just reading through his history, his biography, if you will, on what's out there. He was such a student of the game, Arn. What he maybe didn't have in training, and like you said, back in those days, there wasn't training schools, obviously like we had today. You had to pick it up as you went.
It was called a guy breaking you in. If a guy broke you in, that meant that he had access to a ring, whether it was in a particular territory or something. And if he saw something in a guy that he was going to let him in our business, or at least give him a chance to earn his way into our business. You would get a guy in there. In the old days, the old timers would stretch you. They'd beat you up, kick your ribs in. They did it, how bad do you want this kid? And that was your formal training. It wasn't like you went for months and sometimes years to a school every day and had access to these beautiful facilities. You had a guy meet you down there in the afternoon. And, the Andersons were famous for bringing guys down and giving them a tryout, but really it wasn't a tryout. It was just a gut check. And I'm sure Kevin went through some of that stuff. Plus, he was bodybuilding at the time. Tremendous physique. I mean, a lot of guys don't realize. He was really. I mean, his legs,
power,
strong.
Yeah,
strong thick. Squatter, strong hack. Front squatter, thigh extension. I mean, the guy was jacked.
Yeah.